Hello, everybody. It's Christy Whitman with the Quantum Success Show, where you can get your information and inspiration to create your desires. And as you can see, I have a friend, and if you recognize him, it's because he's been on the show before. He is the amazing Bill Harris. I'm sure you've seen him in movies like The Secret. He's been in personal development and an amazing teacher for almost 40 years. And he is the founder, the creator of Centerpoint Research, which many of you are aware of because it's Holosync, the meditation that really helps you get into a completely different state than just doing meditation alone. I know I have recommended his product to you many times. He's actually been on the show. You're one of the people I've actually had back on the show several times, just because I love you, Bill, and also because your brilliance and information is just, you always have so much to give. So welcome back to the Quantum Success Show.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely.
Glad
Well,
to be
I had to invite you because you have a brand new book out that you're actually going to give everybody for free so they can get it underneath the video, which is very generous and really amazing. It's called The New Science of Super Awareness, and I'm just thrilled to get my hands on it. So I want to just talk to you about what is super awareness. Like, what is awareness and why do you personally think it's important?
Well, actually, I think awareness is the most important thing. I would say that awareness provides the solution to all human problems that have a solution. Some don't. There are some things about being a human that you can't really, you can mitigate in some ways, but you really can't do anything about. The fact that everything is impermanent and that, you know, things come into being and then they exist for a while and then they fall apart or go away or end or whatever. And that causes us to feel loss and we get attached to things and then they go away. And of course, we can't do anything about the fact that we're sensitive. We need a certain narrow temperature range and certain gases to breathe and certain fuel, food. And, there's certain things about being a human being that are kind of preset and we can't do anything about. So, if you were without oxygen for a very short time, that's it. And so on. And then there's another big one is the fact that we don't have much choice about what other people do. You can influence people to a certain extent, but there's so many of them. And I don't have much influence over what the government does. And they do all kinds of things that have a negative effect on my life. And so anyway, but the thing about awareness is that it does provide the solution to those things that you could have a choice about. And that's why it's so important. And that's a word that a lot of people use in a very fluffy, sort of new agey way. And I don't mean it in that way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that more metaphorical kind of description, but it's really a quality in the brain. It's something that's going on in your brain. And
so what happens within the brain? Because I know you've done tons. I mean, you've been doing brain research for years and years. You really are on the cutting edge of it. So what really happens in the brain when we have that sense of awareness, when we become aware?
Well, let me lay a little groundwork about this. I know we don't have tons of time, too, so we want to cut to the chase here. But there are many things that we do outside our awareness, and they're set up to operate that way. If every time you came to a door, you had to go through a whole process of figuring out this is a door, and how does this particular door work? And there's all kinds of things that run on autopilot. But when people are traumatized, which we all are in various ways by losses and disappointments and things that happen in life, some of that autopilot stuff doesn't work very well. And so we begin to create things outside our awareness that sabotage us, that in fact, what I usually talk about, there are 4 areas that you can have awareness about: how you feel, how you behave, which people and situations you attract or become attracted to, and what meanings you assign to what happens. And the reason you could have awareness of, or you could have a choice about those 4 things is because you actually create them. In other words, they come from something you do. It's something, though, that usually you do automatically outside your awareness. When you were 3 or 4 years old or something like that, you suddenly realized, for instance, that you were talking to yourself inside your head. Prior to that, you were talking to yourself inside your head, but it was automatic. You had no choice about it.
Yeah.
Once you begin to have the awareness that you're doing it, it becomes a choice. And you can decide what to talk to yourself inside your head about. And I could go and give many, many examples of that sort of thing, about how as we become aware of certain things that we were doing automatically, they become a choice. What I'm talking about in super awareness is becoming aware of things that most people are not aware of. Things like how you create, how you feel moment by moment, how you unconsciously attract or become attracted to different people or different situations. And we've all had the experience of being attracted over and over again to people that we think, why am I with this person who's a jerk and isn't making my life better? They're making it worse. Or also assigning meanings to what is happening around us. A lot of people realize that there are no meanings out there. We assign them.
We are great meaning makers, aren't we? We love to make meaning out of everything.
But again, it happens outside your awareness.
Right.
So when people become more aware, they begin to notice exactly what they're doing, what kind of cognitive events they're running inside their head that cause them to feel a certain way, that cause them to behave a certain way, that cause them to attract or be attracted to certain people and things, and that cause them to create these. So I've been talking about that for 20 years plus. What's happened lately, though, is that there's all this scientific research that's showing what's happening in the brain when we do those things, when we create those things. And even more important, there's all this scientific research about how your brain can change and how you can do things that will cause you to be able to be aware of those things, which means they become a choice. And once something is a choice, you will always choose to do what or to create what is resourceful, what is good for you. And the things that you're doing that may be sabotaging you or causing you to feel bad or behave in a way you regret, or be attracted to the wrong people, etc., those things just fall away. You can only do those things outside your awareness, those things that aren't good for you. Once you start to do them with awareness, you just can't keep doing them if they don't serve you. So I'm encapsulating 350 pages of stuff.
which they get to fortunately read because of your gifts, so thank you.
Once you understand how important awareness is, and that awareness creates choice, and what things you could have a choice about, then the question that occurs to most thoughtful people is, well, who has this kind of awareness, and how can I get it? And it turns out that for centuries and centuries and centuries, thousands of years actually, the way to become more aware has been to meditate regularly. And the people that Richie Davidson, a researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, in 2005, about 10 years ago, he did all these brain scans and other studies on these Tibetan Buddhist monks, which were hanging out with the Dalai Lama. And he found some really amazing things in their brain scans that showed how they had choice about all these things. It showed how happy they were and how much compassion they had for other people, and how easily they could focus and remain focused, and all these other things that are examples of quote-unquote super awareness, how much ability they had to self-regulate, how much willpower they had, how much choice they had about a lot of things that most people don't have choice about. So one of them was a guy named Mathieu Ricard, and he has been called by the media the world's happiest man, based on the brain scan that probably multiple scans that Dr. Davidson did on his brain. he had meditated for 50,000 hours over about 30 years. Wow. So I got out my calculator and I said 50,000 hours divided by 30 years, that's
I love you, Bill.
1,667 hours a year divided by 300. It turned out to be 3 hours, and if I remember correctly, it was 3 hours and 44 minutes a day in and day out.
Wow.
For 30 years. Now, who has the time to do that?
Really?
I mean...
Did he have children? Did he have a husband? Did he have a... I'm just kidding.
Well, he actually had a PhD in molecular genetics, and he quit that career, though, to become a monk and be around the Dalai Lama. So he had the time to do a lot of this stuff, and there were some of the other monks had only done 10,000 hours, which wouldn't have taken quite as long. But even 10,000 hours takes longer than most people have. I think I figured out that you could do 50,000 hours if you did 30 minutes a day in 274 years. Not very practical.
No.
Well, as you know, I've been offering this Holosync audio technology now for 25 years, and we spent 4 years researching it before that. So it's really been almost 30 years that we've been studying that. And based on the feedback we've gotten from the over 2 million people and over several billions of hours of use that we've received over the last 25 years since I started Centerpoint, we kind of guesstimate that an hour of Holosync is about the equivalent of 8 hours of traditional meditation. So it greatly accelerates the whole process. So anyway, the book really is partly about Holosync, but it's mostly about these changes in the brain. For instance, one of the things that I talk about in the book is something that the press began to call long ago the marshmallow test. I don't know if you've ever heard of the marshmallow test,
no.
But back in the 60s, this guy at Stanford, Walter Mischel, took these little preschoolers and put them in an isolated room, sitting at a table, and on a plate he put some kind of a treat. It became known as the marshmallow test, but they used many other treats. But let's just talk about marshmallows. So he put one marshmallow on the plate. He said, "You can have this marshmallow right now, but I'm going to leave the room for a little while." It was about 20 minutes, actually. "And if you can wait till I get back, you'll get 2 marshmallows." And then they filmed these kids struggling with this. Some of them ate it immediately. Others waited. There was all kinds of ways that they distracted themselves, or ways that they were able to delay gratification. At any rate, they followed these kids then right up into middle age and further. They found out that the kids that could delay gratification, that had more self-control, more ability to self-regulate, more willpower, which has a signature in the brain. And in fact, it increases when you meditate. They had way better grades. They had an average of 220 points higher on their SATs, which is a lot. They made more money. They had better relationships. They had a lower body mass index. They were less likely to be overweight. They were more goal-oriented and achieved their goals. And there's a list of about 25 things that everybody would want that they found these people were naturally doing, whereas the ones that couldn't delay gratification, had kind of the opposite. Then they put them into an fMRI machine that scans their brain. It sees blood flow in the brain, so they can tell which parts of the brain are more active or less active or whatever. And there's a lot of things they found out about it, but the 2 most interesting are, and this is sort of the main message of this book, although it's fleshed out in many different areas because there are many consequences of this. There are 2 parts of the brain that are kind of in competition with each other. One of them is the limbic system. so what some people call the reptilian brain. It's the part of you. It's responsible for fight or flight. When something causes you to think there's danger, your limbic system becomes very active. It takes blood away from your brain and into your extremities so you can fight or flee. And it's a very useful part of your body if there really is a danger. But in our modern society, what happens is people go into fight or flight because somebody criticizes them, or because they didn't get what they want, or somebody
cut them off in traffic.
Yeah, all kinds of small things. It's what causes us to be reactive, to be angry, to be sad, to have all these emotional reactions to things that aren't that big of a deal, but they really feel like it. And so people really, it also causes us to blow off exercising, to blow off our diet resolutions, to decide not to meditate, to procrastinate and not work on our goals. All these things are limbic system driven. And the limbic system, one of the biggest characteristics, important characteristics of the limbic system, it has zero ability to see long-range consequences. So it's, a lot of people talk about being in the moment. This is not the right way to be in the moment.
It kind of probably takes you out of the moment, right?
This is the way to sabotage yourself, by being so in the moment that you want what you want it now, and you can't consider the consequences. Right now, I want to sit and watch TV, even though I said when I got home from work I'm going to exercise, and screw it, I'm just going to do that. And you aren't thinking about, wait a minute, I'm going to get fat, I'm going to not feel good, I'm blowing off my head. You don't think of that. The other part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex, which is right behind your eyebrows. The prefrontal cortex is the source of self-regulation, willpower, planning, rational thinking, and all kinds of other things. So when people meditate, or when they do holosync, it happens a lot faster. The prefrontal cortex becomes stronger. The limbic system becomes calmer. And more connections happen between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, so that the prefrontal cortex can supervise the limbic system. So that when you walk by the bakery case at Whole Foods and see all that stuff, you say, oh, that looks really good. Maybe I should get some of that. And then your prefrontal cortex, which takes a little longer to kick in than your limbic system, which is just like that, your prefrontal cortex kicks in, and this is what I say to myself: that would taste good for about 20 seconds. Then I would start to feel bad emotionally, and I would start to feel bad physically, and later I would probably have some kind of an allergic reaction because it contains stuff that's not good for me and that I happen to be allergic to, and I would put on weight because of this. I'd be more likely to eat this kind of stuff again the next time I'm tempted by it. And so I'm just going to walk by. Now, a lot of people can't do that if their limbic system is really strong and in control, and their prefrontal cortex is not so big. Stress makes your prefrontal cortex shrink. It also causes your limbic system to get bigger, because stress is what causes you to go into fight or flight, whether it's a low-grade fight or flight, like a lot of people are in all the time, background anxiety, or a full-blown fight or flight. But either way, so for instance, Christy, when people are traumatized or abused when they're younger, which a lot of us were, I was, you have a really strong limbic system and not so strong prefrontal cortex, and you get yourself into all kinds of trouble. You make really bad decisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole name of the game is strengthen that prefrontal cortex, calm your limbic system. That's exactly what meditation does. There's way, way more to this, and way more parts of the brain involved. I'm simplifying this just for the sake of time. So when you use holosync, your prefrontal cortex becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. You can focus better. You become more creative, because that comes partly from your prefrontal cortex. You overrule the stupid ideas that your limbic system has. which happens to all of us all the time. You think more clearly. You become emotionally calmer.
Mm.
You are the one that doesn't freak out when things get stressful while everybody else is freaking out. You're the one that's able to say, hold on, wait a minute. What we really need to do here, this is happening. The best possible thing we can do right now is to do blah, blah, blah. And you're the one that can clearly see that, because when people are in flight or flight, the blood is not going to their brain. It's going to their arms and legs so they can fight or flee. Mm. So there's way more to this. I mean, people are more easily can go into flow states where everything is firing on all sides. I have a big section on flow states in the book. And also the other thing that happens is, are you familiar with heart rate variability?
No, I'm not.
Well, heart rate variability, most people think that your heart rate should be really regular. That's actually what happens right before you have a heart attack. Healthy people with a strong, healthy nervous system, there's this little bit of variation between the distance between each heartbeat. And there's ways to measure this. When you breathe in, you actually stimulate your limbic system a bit. Your heart rate goes up. When you breathe out, you calm your limbic system, and your heart rate goes down. And so it's sort of an interplay between those two things. And they found that the stronger someone's limbic system is, or the stronger someone's heart rate variability is, the more resilience they have, the more they can bounce back from things, the more they can handle the ups and downs of life without freaking out. So that is also related to a strong prefrontal cortex and a calmer limbic system. I spoke at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference last November. And when I went there, these people called me up and said, will you wear this heart monitor we have that measures heart rate variability during the conference? And so I didn't know that much about it. I knew what it was, but I didn't know that much about it. But I told him I would, even though I thought, oh my God, what if I'm exposed as crappy heart rate variability? And because I'm supposed to be, this big long-time meditator and have this really aware brain and all this sort of. So anyway, to make a long story short, at the end of the conference, they took me aside and said, at first we thought these readings were really, something was wrong because they were so off the chart. You had the same readings as we see in the people with the best heart rate variability in the world, which are elite athletes.
Wow.
Which is who a lot of elite athletes use measuring this in their training. So I was sort of relieved about that. Then the person who owned this company, her name is Rhonda Collier, she showed me these three measurements of heart rate variability. One was from a long-time traditional meditator. And I don't remember what these units are, but her reading was about 495 while she was meditating. Then she showed me her readings, and it turned out that Rhonda was a long-time Holosync user. She'd been using Holosync for about 8 years. Her readings were up around 6,000, way higher than the long-time traditional meditator, who had higher ones than the average person because of her meditating. Then they showed me mine, which were like 12,200 and something. They were 18 times higher than the traditional meditator, which really kind of blew me away. And this is a measurement of how much you can handle before your limbic system kicks in and you start being stressed and go into some kind of fight or flight. I have been telling people for 25 years that Holosync raises your threshold for stress. And here she just put right in my lap this information that corroborated that in a very dramatic way. So there's a chapter in the book about heart rate variability and this sort of stuff. So anyway, that's probably enough, and we've probably gone over the time you had allotted for this. Do you have any questions about this? Or?
No, I just was going to say it's always a pleasure to have you on because you always give so much valuable information. I always walk away learning way more than I ever thought I would. and the fact that you're always willing to give everybody a gift and add value. So I know a lot of this information is in your book, plus like so much more. So I just recommend that everybody go below the link or below the video to the link, and it's a free book. It's called The New Science of Super Awareness book. And, there's such a correlation now between the brain and what we can become aware of, what we manifest, and how we lower our stress, and how we get into a state of meditation that can actually allow us to become more magnetized or more magnetic to what we do desire. So, Bill, thank you so much for being on the show. Did you want to say something else?
I just wanted to say, when you get the book, everyone, I know how easy it is to get a book and intend to read it and not read it, because I do that too. This is really worth reading. In fact, once you get the book, I'm going to nag you about making sure you read it, because it's very important. This is not just wow, this is an interesting science book about the brain. It's really about how you can apply all the stuff that these scientists have learned so that you can have this kind of super awareness. In other words, you can have awareness, which, remember, creates choice, about things that most people don't have awareness about. It causes you to become a really remarkable person. And people start to get drawn to you and say, well, there's something about you that, how did you get it? I want it. If you want to be that kind of person, get the book, read it, and then take advantage of what all these scientists have learned.
Well, Bill, what comes to me is that, when you're in a space of there's no solutions, there's only one way, that's really coming from a lack mentality. But when you start to open up to there's lots of options, there's lots of choices, that's when you're practicing with abundance. And so, just the fact of shifting someone's perspective to there's all these limitations, there's no choices, everything's a problem, to wow, there's so many choices, there's so many options. It opens up the sense of freedom and relaxation in the body. So I'm all about abundance. So everybody go pick up the book. It's below the link. Bill, you're awesome. I love you. I cannot wait to see you next weekend. So thanks so much for being on the Quantum Success Show. And everyone, I know there's so much information that Bill shared today. Give us one thing that you're taking away and how you're going to take that information and apply it in your life. And have a really awesome week, everybody. Thanks so much, Bill.
No, thanks for having me.
You're
Christy.
welcome. Bye.